The Bruins got absolutely pounded by the Wild in Minnesota yesterday, and if they want to stay competitive this season, they're going to have to pull off a similar move to what the Wild did in acquiring Quinn Hughes.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 20 years. Today is Monday, December 15th, and we are going to be discussing yesterday's loss to the Minnesota Wild, their acquisition of Quinn Hughes, and how the Bruins need to pull off. It's going to be difficult to pull off a similar move, but they need to add if they want to remain competitive in the Eastern Conference and compete for a playoff spot. We are going to also look at the stats, storylines, significance from this loss, and take a look at the week ahead because it's a pretty busy schedule for the Bruins ahead of the holiday break. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. All right, let's get right into it. Yesterday, the Bruins lost 6-2 to the Minnesota Wild, and it was the debut of Quinn Hughes with his new team. There was a couple massive trades on Friday. The first one being Tristan Jarry being sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for Stuart Skinner, a couple other pieces moving around there. And then on Friday night, Quinn Hughes traded to the Minnesota Wild for a pretty elect package going the other way. It was Zev Boyum, Marco Rossi, Liam Ongrim, and a first-round pick being sent to Vancouver in exchange for Hughes, arguably a top 3 defenseman in the NHL, winning the Norris Trophy in 2024. Hughes can be a free agent in 2027, so it could be a playoff run plus another season for the Wild that they're getting out of Hughes before he takes off as an unrestricted free agent. But it also could be a game-changing swing for the Wild where they're acquiring a franchise defenseman to already go with a very strong defense core that they have in Minnesota. That includes Jared Spurgeon, Brock Faber, Jonas Brodin, who was out of the lineup yesterday due to injury. Zach Bogosian in there as well. Zach Middleton. It's probably the best defensive core in the NHL right now when everybody's healthy. The Bruins severely outclassed in this game. We knew that Minnesota's power play was going to be even more lethal. They've already got Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy out there. You add Quinn Hughes to the mix. Brock Faber has had a fantastic bounce back season, and it's been a problem for the Bruins all season long. You take some penalties, get in trouble. The penalty kill has been pretty solid so far this season, but the Wild went 2 for 3 on the power play yesterday, including the game opening goal from Jared Spurgeon, Ryan Hartman getting the other power play goal, Faber getting the primary assist on both of those goals, despite the addition of Quinn Hughes. Hughes scoring the 4th goal for Minnesota to put it at 4-0 at that point. The Bruins scored a couple goals, including a last-second one from Andrew Peeke, his first as a Bruin on an actual NHL goaltender. But it was way too little, way too late for the Bruins, who, we'll discuss this later on, but they did well to get 4 out of a possible 6 points on this road trip that went through St. Louis, Winnipeg, and Minnesota. They're still in a good spot. But one of the big storylines coming into the season was whether the Bruins would be buyers or sellers as we get closer to the trade deadline. Last season, of course, they were decided sellers with Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo, Justin Brazeau, among other, Trent Frederick being sent away. This season, things are much better than they were last year in terms of stability and performance. The Bruins are in the mix for a playoff spot, whereas last season they bottomed out in the Eastern Conference. But they definitely need a spark or two in order to be really successful or to give themselves the most or the best shot at making noise when the games count the most. Although they do count now because every point we know matters. There has been speculation that the Bruins may be interested in Matthias Maselli from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Elliot Friedman the other day said the Leafs are gauging interest for the struggling winger. He's been in and out of the lineup, and the Bruins are believed to be in the mix. Of course, there is recent trade history between these two teams. The Bruins were interested in acquiring him from Utah before the Leafs scooped him. We had the Brandon Carlo Fraser Minton deal that was recently completed, and the Bruins obviously coming out on top of that one so far. Maybe the Bruins could move in Andrew Peeke should the Maple Leafs be interested, with Brandon Carlo now out due to injury. There's some interest there, although that wouldn't be much of an earth-shattering acquisition. Maselli is very talented, or Michelli, I should say, and could step into the middle six and make an impact for the Bruins. It's unlikely that they're going to pull off a Quinn Hughes type deal. Those kind of players aren't often made available, but there are options out there for the Bruins to add. They have some draft capital, some prospects that they could move. Maybe even they just look at the Minnesota Wild, and we know that there is a need for the Bruins on the right side on the blue line. I mentioned all the defensemen Minnesota has at their disposal when they're healthy. You look at a guy like David Jiricek, who Wild traded for last season, made a big splash in acquiring him from the Columbus Blue Jackets, sending out a bunch of picks. Damon Hunt, who was reacquired by the Wild. Jiricek has struggled to find his footing so far at the NHL level. He did play yesterday in the game against the Bruins and had to leave with a lower body injury, I believe. No points in 14 games so far this season with the Wild, but he is pretty much everything the Bruins would be looking for in a right-hand shot defenseman. 6th overall draft pick in 2022. He's got the size, 6'4", 204 pounds. He's got the mobility. He's got a rocket of a shot. And there's still a lot to be mined there from a player like David Jiricek. The Wild are pretty thin down the middle now after having traded Marco Rossi to the Canucks. Maybe they could be talked into taking a hometown boy like Casey Middlestat, who can play center, second line, or top six, along with Joel Eriksson Ek, who has a very dynamic line going on right now with former Bruin Marcus Johansson, as well as Matt Boldy. There would have to be some salary move to make that work, but hey, maybe the Bruins can, quote unquote, sell if they don't see Middlestat as a core guy beyond next season, and bring in some, like a guy who could be rock solid as a top 4 defenseman behind Charlie McAvoy. At any rate, the Bruins, with that loss yesterday, they fell out of a top 3 spot in the Atlantic. They are outside of the top 8 when it comes to point percentage in the Eastern Conference. they can't just stand pat with what they have right now and expect to jump back into the top 8 and compete for a playoff spot. They need to make some additions. They need to add some offense. They need to get a bit better defensively as well. Offense hasn't necessarily been the problem for this team so far this season. In fact, they've scored the most goals out of any team in the Eastern Conference. They've also allowed the 5th most goals, which is a bit of a problem. So they need maybe to look at defense. The right side is where they can look. Maybe Jiricek, not the immediate answer, but he could be a long-term solution for this team on the blue line. Either way, I don't think Don Sweeney can stand pat with this team, and I don't think they should be selling and kind of looking to do what they did last season by getting prospects and draft picks, because when you have Jeremy Swayman, Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak, now Morgan Geekie as your core players, and you have Hampus Lindholm, Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, among others, as your secondary, you owe it to them to do everything you can to get this team to the playoffs and put them in a position to succeed. I don't think they're Stanley Cup contenders in the Eastern Conference, but it's pretty wide open right now with the Carolina Hurricanes being number 1. The New York Islanders are your second best team in the East right now. It's wide open, and there is room for the Bruins to make some moves and make a jump up the standings. Let's talk more about the storylines, stats, and significance from yesterday's loss to the Wild, as well as tee up the week ahead here as Locked On Boston Bruins continues. Let's say you just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? It's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire immediately. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. You can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Boston Bruins. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the number 1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Boston Bruins with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonbruins.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. So we already talked about the Bruins perhaps needing to make an addition or two to keep up with some of the big guns in the NHL, kind of going for it. Not that the Bruins, it's their year necessarily, but they've got a pretty good team, better than expected. The Minnesota Wild broadcast even mentioned that during the game, how nobody thought the Bruins would be as good as they have been so far. They lost yesterday in pretty lopsided fashion, but at the end of the day, it was a 3-game road trip. You're coming home with 4 out of possible 6 points. And Marco Sturm, after the game, said he was very happy with the games they played. Even in this one, he thought half the game was pretty solid. They go home over 500. That's exactly what they wanted. Guys dug in, played hard. To play in those 3 buildings, St. Louis, Winnipeg, Minnesota, it's not an easy road trip. And overall, he's pretty happy with how they were able to come out of it with 4 out of the possible 6 points. Sean Corrali said, it shows you the margin of error is very small in the NHL today. The difference last night was the penalty kill, which personally for him sucks because he's a mainstay on the penalty kill. It's been slipping a bit recently. I think it was Scott McLaughlin, WEI, who cited that since Thanksgiving, it's like in the 70s, which is not great. They got to go back to the drawing board and realize that what can make a difference and can win a game, Sean Corrali said, something they have to learn from. Hampus Lindholm, it's hard in this league when you get behind in the first. 5-on-5, they did a lot of good stuff, he thought. The key is not getting too high or too low. They've been doing some good stuff. You try to learn from games like this, go home and get some good wins there at TD Garden. And in fact, the Bruins now have 5 straight games at home before the holiday break. We'll talk about that coming up later on in the podcast. Quinn Hughes was skating in his first game with the Wild after getting traded from Vancouver on Friday, scored 54 seconds into the third period, pushing the deficit to 4-0. Matt Boldy made it 5-0 at 8:08 of the third. Alex Steeves was able to get the Bruins on the board midway through the third period. Mikey Eyssimont collected the puck behind the net, popped it up to Fraser Minton, who tapped it over to Steeves, who ripped it past Philip Gustafsson. Steeves' 7th goal of the season and 4th in 6 games. But again, not nearly enough. Even despite Andrew Peeke scoring late in the game, the damage was done, and the Bruins didn't really get much of anything from their top players in this one. David Pastrnak was pretty quiet, as was Morgan Geekie, Elias Lindholm. Like, no points from the top 6 in this one, and you just can't win in the NHL today without having your best players be at their very best. Mark Kastelik and Marat Husnudinov led the way with 4 shots apiece. Pastrnak and Geekie combined, and Lindholm combined for 4 total shots. So that top line had as many shots as Husnudinov did individually, as well as Mark Kastelik, to show you how ineffective they were. Now, Minnesota's a very good team. Joel Eriksson Ek can shut down anybody from Connor McDavid all the way down to Elias Lindholm. But you have to get more from your top guys in order to be successful. Bruins went 0 for 2 on the power play. Minnesota went 2 for 3. And that was a big separating point, with the shots on goal being even at 31 apiece. Jeremy Swayman stayed in for the whole game. 806 save percentage in this one, which dropped his season number down to 908. So he's back a bit down under his career average. That's going to happen when there's some hugely lopsided games like this one. These two teams will play again in March, but the Bruins have some work to do in order to get back to a winning pace. And I mean, still, even after that loss, they're in a decent spot. Technically, they have, not technically, literally, they have 38 points in 33 games. They're 5 games above 500, 576 point percentage. And that is good for the second wild card spot at the moment. They have more points than Pittsburgh, who blew a couple huge leads over the weekend and lost twice in overtime. They're ahead of the Devils by a point now, 2 points ahead of the Rangers, 4 points ahead of the Panthers, 5 ahead of the Leafs, 6 ahead of the Senators. So they have a pretty decent buffer right now, but there are no teams in the Eastern Conference under 500, which is absolutely wild. And if you look at point percentage, the Bruins are currently 9th in the East, slightly behind the Detroit Red Wings, who are 1 point ahead of them in the same amount of games played. And Florida's nipping at their heels. The Leafs looking pretty lost, having been beat by the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday. The Senators are struggling. So there is a real opportunity here for the Bruins to get in the mix, and a real opportunity as well to claim a wild card spot. You have no idea if the Islanders, the Flyers, the Penguins can hold on. The Devils are being decimated by injuries, and that's what makes this upcoming homestand so important for the Boston Bruins. They have to finish strong here before the holiday break with these 5 home games, and we'll tee up what's coming up next for these Boston Bruins here as the podcast continues. NFL Sundays move very fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. Now, if you're feeling the Bruins right now, you can put some money down on them winning the Stanley Cup. They're at plus 20,000 right now. Just keeps every game more exciting and keeps you invested in the game. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets with FanDuel as well as the NHL and the NBA. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, it is almost the holiday break in the NHL, and our Bruins have 5 big home games remaining on the schedule. That's 10 points on the board that can really make a huge difference when it comes to the final standings. They will be hosting the Utah Mammoth on Tuesday. That is a game we'll preview more in depth on tomorrow's podcast. But Utah right now, since Thanksgiving, they have a point percentage of .400 and are really struggling without Logan Cooley in the lineup, who has been injured and will miss a good amount of time. They're 4-6 over their last 10, 400 point percentage since Thanksgiving. And that's a real opportunity for the Bruins to take advantage of a team that is missing one of its best players. After that, Thursday evening, the Bruins will be hosting the Edmonton Oilers. That's obviously going to be a very tough game. The Oilers did absolutely tune the Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, but they came back and lost 4-1 last night to Montreal, which, thanks a lot, Edmonton. You did not do the Bruins any favors because the Canadiens are, of course, a team that the Bruins are competing with in the Atlantic for one of those playoff spots. After the game on Thursday, the Bruins will host the Vancouver Canucks on Saturday night. That will be a Hockey Night in Canada game. Obviously, a bit of a rivalry game. It's not, as hot as it once was. And the Canucks, arguably lesser now than they were last week after having traded Quinn Hughes. Although Zeb Boehm, Marco Rossi, Liam Holmgren made immediate impacts in a win on Sunday. And we all know Jake DeBrusk is going to be coming in hot, wanting to stick it to his old team. Although low-key, maybe he's a trade candidate to be coming back. I know the Bruins interested in Connor Garland from the Vancouver Canucks, but it would be kind of cool if Jake DeBrusk were made available and the Bruins decided to bring him back. Not likely, but, maybe. So then the Bruins will be in action again on Sunday night against the Ottawa Senators. So back-to-back there for the Bruins on Sunday night. And then Tuesday, the 23rd, the Bruins will host the Montreal Canadiens, which will be a huge game for both teams. The last time they played, sparks flew. The rivalry appeared to be back, and that's going to be a great game to watch right before the holiday break, getting us into the holiday spirit. After that, the Bruins, to end the calendar year, will be in Buffalo, in Calgary, and then in Edmonton on New Year's Eve. And then they will also travel to Vancouver and Seattle on that road trip. So all that to say, there's a huge 10 points on the board for the Bruins in the next few games, and they need to do a couple things in order to maximize this opportunity. I mentioned earlier the penalty kill since Thanksgiving has been pretty poor. 28th ranked in the NHL, 69.6% success rate, which is, pretty bad. Their penalty kill the power play has been all right. They rank 8th at 26.7%, but that mark on the power play, 69.6%, is really, really bad. And that's something that the Bruins need to shore up on this homestand, especially if they're going to still keep taking as many penalties as they have been. They're also, since Thanksgiving, recording only 26.8 shots on goal, which is 23rd in the NHL, and they're allowing 31.3, which is the 5th highest total in the NHL, average in the NHL over that span, over the last 8 games. They're 5-3 in that span, a 625 point percentage, plus 3 goal differential in that one. But the power play, well, it's been steady. 8th, the penalty kill has been brutal, and they're allowing many more shots than they're generating. So these are continued problems for the Bruins. If they're going to add anywhere, it'd be cool to get a DeBrusk or a Garland, but I think defense is really where they need to shore things up, and they need to add specifically on the right side. If there's one area where they need to improve, it's there. And they have some injuries right now to Henry Jokiharju, but I mean, when he comes back, he's not really much of a difference maker for this team. McAvoy, Peak, and Soderstrom are your current right side, and that's just an area that has to be improved in order for this team to remain competitive and in the mix. David Jiricek would be a nice kind of long-term add. He still needs a bit of work, but maybe if you bring him in, change of scenery once again, and he's able to make a difference for the Bruins. He did get hurt in that game yesterday, though. Maybe on tomorrow's podcast, we'll take a look at some more of those right-hand shot defensemen that could be made available. All that to say, it was a relatively successful road trip. The Bruins have a big opportunity to get some points here on this homestand before the holidays, and we are going to bring you consistent coverage here on Locked On Boston Bruins because we are here every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Locked On Boston Bruins. Tomorrow we'll preview the Mammoth game, maybe look at some of those right-hand shot options, and bring you all the latest. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Boston Bruins so you get the very latest on your favorite podcast app, as well as bonus content on YouTube. You can find the podcast on socials at Locked NHL Bruins. Finally, did Locked On Boston Bruins make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on socials to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform. Tag me as well, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. Find all the information you need on lockedonbostonbruins.supercast.com. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Happy Monday, rough weekend, kind of world news-wise. So please, again, take care of yourselves. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network.